Yeah, well, okay, let's just get started. I guess the first thing is just please introduce yourself. A lot of people here, I think, know you. I know you well. But for those who don't, if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your career.
Sure. So I am a copywriter. I am the founder and CEO of a micro agency, which is basically a copywriting agency. So that means that I don't do full service marketing from start to finish. I focus specifically on copywriting. And I have been running my own business for the past 3.5 years. So before that, I was doing a variety of jobs. Maybe we'll talk about that soon, but I was kind of all over the place. I was writing for magazines. I have a degree, I have a master's in speech language pathology. I was working as a speech therapist twice a week. I was working as an agency copywriter 2 days a week for like a good 7-8 years before I launched this business. And today I run this micro agency, and I also run an umbrella of programs for copywriters and freelancers who want to learn how to launch more profitable businesses. So
Amazing.
That's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I chose you. I think even if you didn't have those services, you're the copywriter who I would have wanted here. But the fact that you have services to help people, so anyone who's here, stay till the end, of course, it's going to be interesting. But I hope that by the end, Michal will tell us about her classes. She has an amazing offering for people who want to jump in and get started from home now. Yeah, so that's something that you're going to want to know about, and I recommended it to lots of my clients. And I think some of your really great graduates are people who I've sent to you have like real careers as copywriters now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really exciting for me to see that. For some of them it's taken a few months. For some of them it's taken a little bit longer. But they're really enjoying their careers and thriving. And that's why I'm really excited to share my journey with you today, because I believe in copywriting as a career. I believe in using your natural strengths and doing what you love if you can. And so I feel like I've been given a gift, and I'm so grateful, and I'd like to pay it forward.
Amazing. Okay, so should we get started with the questions, or are we waiting?
Yeah, I'm sorry. She seems to be having technical difficulties, so let's just get going.
Okay, so we'll dig right in, and if we need to repeat anything, we will. Okay, so the first thing is that we want the background. You just went into a little bit, and I remember reading a post, I think, on LinkedIn years ago, where you were telling people that, like, don't just jump right into this. You freelanced for 7 years, and I remember thinking, like, oh, okay, so this is just not overnight, the fact that she's so good. So that was validating and a relief to me. But I guess back up a little bit to your story, like, how and when did you choose this profession?
So I kind of fell into writing. What happened is that I moved to Israel shortly after I got married, and I was finishing up my BA, and I didn't have kids yet, and I was looking for a job on the side to fill the days. I wasn't in college full time. And I landed this internship position at a company called Targum Press, which is now no longer in existence, but it's a publishing company that has published quite a few books over the years. And I had a family friend who worked in the company. They needed a marketing assistant as an intern. So I landed this internship position, and I started writing for them. And I started writing press releases and book descriptions and book flaps and articles about different books we were putting out. I started brainstorming titles for them. And it kind of occurred to me after a couple months there that, like, wow, there's such a thing as making money writing. Like, I can actually write and make money with it. And that was just a revelation to me. I never knew that that was a possibility. And then what happened was I ended up staying on after my internship, working there for 2.5 years until the company eventually closed. And it was an amazing 2.5 years. I loved every minute of it. It was a dream place to work. I worked with some of the smartest, funniest, most brilliant people in the creative publishing industry. And then what happened after I left 2.5 years later, by then I had earned my master's in speech language pathology. And I was like, okay, now it's time to go and jump into your conventional career and do speech therapy, right? That's what you got trained in. That's what you spent thousands of dollars on investing in as a career. So I started working as a speech therapist 2 days a week, 3 days a week, but somehow I had been bitten by the writing bug and I couldn't let go. Like I couldn't just drop the writing completely. So I transitioned into writing for magazines. And I started like with a submission that I was so excited. My first submission got accepted to Mishpacha. And then from there on, I started regularly writing feature articles for them and personal essays and for other publications too, Aish and Bina magazine. And that was like my side job that I really enjoyed. And so then I was like juggling. So I was writing for these magazines. I was working 2 days a week as a speech therapist. And then I started writing for this agency. I started writing copy for the Annellis Group, which is led by my really good friend and brilliant person, Elisheva Perlman. And she wasn't a good friend then, but we have become friends over the years since I worked for her for a while. And so I was all over the place. I was doing 3 different things, literally. I was working for her agency. I was writing magazine articles, and I was working 2 days a week very intensely as a speech therapist in 2 different places. And I was accepting some freelance copywriting projects on the side. I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing there either. Like it was just like very random, and I was all over the place, fragmented, scattered brain syndrome. And I after a few years of doing this, I realized I just don't want to continue this way. And I saw this advertisement for a copywriter accelerator program that teaches you how to launch a proper copywriting freelance business. And I said, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I forked over $1,200, which seemed like an enormous amount of money at the time, and it was. And I was so nervous about the investment, but I really threw myself into it. And I said, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm leaving my speech therapy jobs for a year. I'm stopping to write for the magazines for a year, and I'm going to just throw all my energies into building this copywriting business and see where it takes me. And that was 3.5 years ago. And thank God, I am so grateful I made that decision. And I feel blessed that I'm able to look back and say it was the best thing I ever did. So that's really how I got into writing and how I got to where I am today.
Wow. I love that story because it's such a realistic journey, especially the beginning where you were already doing something that you loved and then you thought you had to do like the right things. So many people do that. So one of the questions that we have is, I'm going to skip a little bit to that, is a little bit about education. Like you thought that you had to get the master's degree in speech therapy. And a lot of the people who are watching here who are interested in the field are like seminary graduates, right? If you're 18, 19. So if someone wanted to get an education, like would you say that it's mandatory, or what sort of degree would they get so that they don't have to go that whole circuitous route to get back to what they really love doing, which is writing?
I think the best degree to get if you're considering a degree in a career in copywriting is a marketing degree, or at the very least even a psychology degree, something around those fields. I think that's far more useful than an English degree. That said, if you want to have a degree, you want to be able to say you earned a BA, then an English degree is probably the next best thing if it's in a really good program that hones your writing skills, because good writing skills are absolutely essential for good copywriting. So while copywriting is not writing, if you're not a good writer, you won't be a good copywriter.
Interesting. Okay, I love that answer. So it's not necessarily even English first. And it's interesting because I think a lot of the people who I see going into copywriting are like ex-teachers, ex-social workers, like things in the field where they probably had to use a lot of speaking and writing skills. So they have that background. Do you think that somebody who's young can go into this, or do you think that it's sort of like a second career for most people? Because I see that a lot.
I think anytime you're young, all it means is that you're going to need to build up more experience to excel in your career. So like any career, you can start when you're young. You just have to have realistic expectations in terms of how fast you're going to advance without any experience. And you have to be able to put in that time and those years and maybe lower wages for a certain period of time until you build up that experience and are able to say, okay, I'm ready to launch my business. And I think part of the reason I was able to grow my business so fast is because I had accrued quite a bit of agency copywriting experience over the years.
Right, right. Okay. And by the way, I see someone asked, Heather mentioned a program. So anyone who wants to look in the comments for that. And then Malka asked if she can, definitely, yeah, you can put in comments as we go along, and then Michal will answer them at the end. So yeah, so that makes sense, getting experience. I usually tell young people that it's sort of like either you can get, like, say you're going to be an expert in 5 to 10 years. So there's two ways to get there. Like, you can either learn on your own dime and build your way up through experience, or you can learn in someone else's dime and get paid for it, right? So would you say, like, do you recommend to your students or to just people who are asking you that working for an agency is better, or how would you compare that to freelancing?
If you're starting out and you don't have much writing experience and you don't have much marketing experience, I really recommend starting at an agency. It gives you not just a lot of hands-on intense experience actually writing different kinds of copy, but it gives you a very broad, holistic understanding of how the creative process works from start to finish. So from the moment a client comes and says, hey, I need a marketing campaign, or hey, I need to increase my sales, what are you guys going to do for me? So when you work in an agency, you really see the steps that are taken to achieve that end result. So while you might focus just on the copy part, you're getting that broad view, and that will enable you to give more value. If you eventually launch your own business, you'll be able to be more of a strategist and be able to advise your clients on the best route to take for their needs.
Interesting. Would you say that gives you, like, I mean, I think so, but I'm just curious what you think, that gives you a huge advantage over your competitors, which is probably not a good word. I don't think you actually have competition. But the fact that you are able to come from a marketing agency perspective, although you say that you exclusively do copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Any good copywriter, the really good copywriters are also marketing strategists. And a lot of this you just have to learn and acquire with time and experience. So some of the marketing fundamentals, like these are things I teach in my course. So we're talking about like the sales funnel you learn, and the principles of persuasion, and different ways to convert customers. So there are things you can learn. There's a lot of practical information, but being able to apply it in a wise, effective way to individual situations, that will come with more experience.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. I love that. So we went through sort of the backgrounds. What were your past experiences? I wonder, though, if you would say that having worked as a speech therapist, like, do you feel like that gave you any benefit at all? Or like people who are coming from a different line of work, or like it's just good that you carry through with your writing throughout your career?
It's interesting. I can't point to a specific benefit that I feel the speech therapy experience gave me. I think it gave me benefits in other areas of my life, and it was very gratifying in many ways, but I can't say that it helped me specifically in my copywriting business.
Right. Okay. It makes sense. It's funny. Like I say, like I have a degree in education, and although maybe a lot of what I do is educating like this, but not the kind that I went to school for. And I used to say like, oh, it was a complete waste of a degree. But on the other hand, it made me feel like I was able to charge a higher value, because after all, I have a master's degree. So like if people are considering going through just the course, do you feel like that's just like an issue that people have to get over, like a confidence issue, or there is any good reason to have a master's degree?
So I don't think you really need a master's degree. I think you should have a BA. That's like very basic these days, and people look for that on your profile. I do think the fact that once I invested in a master's degree, and it happens to be in communication sciences, which most people don't realize is related to speech language pathology and not marketing communications, I think the fact that I have that master's degree is now, it's good for my LinkedIn profile, it's good for my resume, it makes me a little bit more credible. But I would not advise you to plunk down $25,000 or $30,000 just for the sake of having a master's degree. If you have a solid BA that gave you real skills in psychology, marketing, or English, and then you just jump in and start getting real experience, that's more than enough to be successful.
Totally agree. Yeah, there's like so many better things to do with that money, like pay for an excellent course or a great mentor or things like that. Okay, so let's talk about what people really want to know. which is the money question, right? So of course, when someone comes to me and they're considering your career and their first question is the money question, I'm like, oh no, you got this wrong. You can't go into anything for money. And the reason I know that is because I get the other kinds of clients who have great jobs and make great money who are miserable. So I don't want them ending up that way. On the other hand, money is important, and it's another thing that obviously should be considered before someone chooses a career. So what would you say? I hear like such ranges of I guess the not successful to the very successful copywriters. How much could someone make? Could somebody realistically convince their parents that this is a real career that they could support themselves with?
So I agree with you. The range is really, really wide. And a lot of it depends on how much work you're putting in, how hard you're willing to work to improve your skills, develop your skills, invest in yourself, and market yourself. So a lot of copywriters I know are making $2,000 to $3,000 a month with part-time work, like very part-time work. The successful copywriters I know, when I talk lucratively successful, are making at least 5 to 10 a month. And I know many, many copywriters in that category. So that's like a very doable category if you're serious about building your skills and building your business. The highly successful copywriters who have really built up a brand for themselves and can be that marketing strategist that we mentioned earlier. So those copywriters can be making 5 digits a month easily, $20,000, $25,000 a month if they've reached a certain level where often they're not just creating copy for clients, but they have their own products at that point, whether they're selling those to clients or to other copywriters. So that's like the very high end, I would say.
Ladies, do you hear this? Like when I tell this to people, and I know this from you, it's insane. It's like you can make more, I mean, come and tell your grandmother that you're making more writing as a copywriter than, oh, hi, the person who started this, doing just writing. It's crazy. Okay. So now let's talk about, like, would you say that most people, do you see that people like start off a little bit, like say it's normal to start at 2,000 and then go up to 20,000, or you know what, let's talk about the people in your course, because you said it's such a range, right? So the people who take your course, which you'll tell us more about, what do you feel like, do you have an average of what your students make, the ones who obviously actually do something with the information they learned?
So again, there's really a wide range, even among my students. A lot of it depends on how many hours a week they put in, and some of it is very intentional. I have some students with large families who don't want to be working more than 15 hours a week, and that's great. And so they take on agency jobs, or they take on a very limited number of client projects, so that obviously directly affects the revenue. Let's talk about in terms of hour, because I find that's like a easier place for me to start, because like I said, a lot of it depends on how many hours you put in per week. So while I never would charge hourly, and I always tell my students, don't charge hourly, your clients are paying for value. They're not paying for your time. You're not a commodity. You still have to have an internal hourly rate that you use to calculate your project fees, right? So a lot of agencies are expecting to pay between, like a lot of the Jewish agencies are on the lower end in terms of agency, what they're willing to pay copywriters. That might be something like $40 to $50 to $60 an hour. That's considered like the lower end. The higher end agencies might be paying more like $75 to $85 an hour, maybe even more for very experienced copywriters. And if you're really just starting out, I tell my students, like, your first 3 projects, don't do anything for free, but charge very, very little for your first 3, 4 projects. You just have to get that experience, get something under your belt. So that could come out to like $20 to $30 an hour for the first few months of gaining experience and building up some kind of portfolio that you can share. Ideally, most of my students, I would say at this point, are earning between $50 to $100 an hour. So like I said, it's a range, but I would say that's where most of them fall in.
Right, right. Okay. I see someone just asked this question, which I was going to get to next, about like getting your first job, right? So let's go into that now. Thank you for your question. So would you say, like, did you have a hard time getting your first job? And most of your students, I mean, whether I guess maybe a lot of them are starting as freelancers because they have experience already and they're taking it so that they can start a business, because I know that that's a lot of what you teach too. But would you say that they're getting those, what sort of jobs are they getting and how are they getting them? Because that's so hard, getting your first job at an agency.
Yeah, it is hard getting your first job at an agency. On the other hand, agencies are constantly looking for fresh talent. A lot of the more experienced copywriters phase out of their agency roles. So the agency really needs to fill those roles. And also a lot of agencies are looking for freelancers to work with. And if it works out well, they'll work with them on a more steady basis, but on a contractor basis, right? Like not as an employee. So agencies have a constant need for copywriters. What you do need in order to land your first job with an agency is have some kind of basic portfolio. And that's actually something that we work very hard on in the course. In my course, we have assignments, actual copywriting assignments that you have to complete by the end of the course. And I strongly recommend to my students to hire a designer to design those assignments, right? Even though they're not for real businesses, it wasn't paid work, but it's excellent copy. And it's a great way to have some kind of portfolio that you can send potential clients and agencies. Also, just like there are copywriters at different levels, right? There are the copywriters who are charging $250 an hour and the copywriters who are charging $40 an hour, and then the guys on Fiverr in Pakistan who are charging $5 an hour, right? So there are also customers at different levels. So like, while I might be serving customers at this point who are more medium to large organizations and who have significantly larger budgets, marketing budgets, there are much smaller businesses that need to work with the cheaper copywriters. They're not ready to work with a copywriter who charges $250 an hour. So it's really, there's a shidduch for everyone. It's just about finding the right person and being able to communicate your value.
That's so great to hear. I remember like the first time I write now a little column for the team pages about career coaching. And before that, like the first magazine that I wrote for, I'd never written publicly before. So I sort of like made up an assignment as if it was a magazine saying, okay, this is what you're going to do. And I put together a series of 3 articles and then I submitted it and they were like, this looks great. Where'd you write it? So I like that advice to just either you're going to take the course and you'll have a portfolio, or just have something to show when you apply to a job. And then it sounds like you really, if you're not trying to charge too much, it's not about the money, and you recognize that you're going to the agency really for the experience and the marketing training that they have to offer you. It's so worth it. It's like really, really like they're getting, but like I tell people, if you're getting paid $25 an hour to work, or even if you're getting paid $15 an hour to work, that's a lot cheaper than college. Somebody's paying you to teach you. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
So
if you're clear that you want to be a copywriter and you're enjoying it, then you really should be viewing those first few projects as paid training.
Amazing. Okay. So like you said about personality, you mentioned it earlier, right? So what would you say, I guess, tell us about your personality, like what you're like, I guess, in your work life. And would you say like there's a certain distinct personality that you notice among people who make successful copywriters?
So I think we have to define what successful copywriter is, because there are copywriters who write really good copy, but they don't necessarily have 6-figure businesses. And then there are copywriters who write good copy and they also have 6-figure businesses. So there's like financially successful, and then there's professionally successful. Like an agency copywriter might be churning out fabulous copy, but still making less than $100,000 a year just because they work for an agency and they don't have their own business, right? So,
right.
So in terms of, I think it's important to first talk about like the qualities of a good copywriter, someone who writes good copy. You have to be able to listen very well, like listen to the customer, listen to the client, so that you can thread out their differentiators and what you need to be communicating in the copy. You need to be able to ask the right questions, pull out the right answers from the client, because ultimately they know much more about the business than you do. You have to be willing to do research. So you have to have somewhat of an organized, methodical mind that enjoys kind of like learning about new things, and organizing all the information in a consumable, actionable way. So there's like a little bit that I describe copywriting as a mixture of art and science. If you're like all creativity, like 1,000% creativity, then copywriting might be difficult for you because research is such an integral part. And there are actual conversion principles that have to inform everything you do. So it's like 50% art, 50% science. So the ideal copywriter has a flair for writing, has a sense of rhythm in her writing, and knows how to engage and write in a compelling way, but also enjoys the process of having a goal and writing copy that actually meets those goals. So like there has to be numbers there. So maybe that's increasing sales by 50%. Maybe that's hitting an open rate for an email you write, hitting an open rate of 25%. But there has to be someone who has enough of that science brain that they're excited about measurable results and not just about the creativity and the art of writing.
I love that. It's so important because there's so many people who go into fields, like I think it's very classic of social workers, who are like, if I had realized that most of my day was going to be spent writing notes and not talking to people, I wouldn't have necessarily chosen this. Like speaking of social workers, though, you mentioned listening. I think that there's a lot of ex-social workers in this field because they're so good at listening.
Yeah, and I think they also have a strong background in psychology, which is very valuable in marketing because there's such an overlap with marketing and psychology. Any good marketing campaign is employing fundamental psychological principles.
Yeah, so much. And don't get overwhelmed, guys. It sounds like a lot, but you don't have to start off with knowing all of that. Okay, so let's go on to like a regular day. Like what in the world does a normal day of work look in the life of Michal Eiskowitz, copywriter?
Okay, so that's a really important question. I just want to jump back. There's something I forgot to mention. In terms of qualities of a good copywriter, so your communication has to be good. So you're going to be doing a lot of interacting with clients. That means you have to be able to establish some kind of rapport with your client, make them feel comfortable, make them feel like they're enjoying working with you, and create a conversation and a connection. So both your verbal and writing skills when it comes to communication should be excellent. And you should enjoy people, right? If you're like a heavy introvert, it might be hard to interact with clients all day. And that's actually agency copywriting might be a better option. If you're more on the introverted side, then when you work for an agency, you're interacting with the customer much less, right? You're not the face of the company. You're usually more on the back end. So there's like an account executive who interacts with the customer and you're writing the copy and then they're doing the project management.
So you get to just sit in your corner and do what you love instead of doing all those other things. Which is really interesting, right? Which is interesting to note because that's new for me because I always thought, well, if you're an introvert, you just want to like work at home in your little, home office versus having to work with all these people around. So the introvert extrovert there, but that's a good point. And
I'm not an introvert at all, and so I really need to speak to people, and I find that I do get that outlet of speaking to people a lot through my clients. So even though I am working from my home office, I really do interact with a lot of people. I have an average of 2 to 3 meetings a day. So Zoom is not the same as real life. And every so often, yes, I need to go out for coffee and see someone face to face, but it does give me that sense of connection.
Right. Okay. That's so good to know. And for the Myers-Briggs people here, I feel like classic like NFs, but like any of the other, like I was thinking INFJ, but I guess any of the types, the E or the whatever, but the J I think would be the like more organized, systematic, the way you're describing that you really have to have a lot of structure and science to your work. Okay, so let's go back to the day in the life. Tell us about that.
Okay, so assuming we're talking about a day in regular life and not Corona life.
Yeah.
So a day in regular life, I start working, I'd say my kids are out by 8. I treat myself to a nice, calm breakfast with no one looking or touching at my food because no one's around. So I have my coffee and my breakfast, usually from like 8:15 to 8:45, something like that. And I start real work at about 8:45. I'm based in Ramat Beit Shemesh. For those of you who don't know, I'm in Israel. So most of my clients, 95%, are in the States, a few are in Europe. So it actually works pretty well for me because what I do is from, let's say, 8:45 to 12:45, I try to do a lot of deep work. So a lot of focus work. That might be researching, that might be actual writing copy. But I am at my computer and tackling projects, not talking to anyone on the phone, not writing emails, just doing the more intense, focused work. And like I said, any copywriting project is about 50% research and 50% writing copy. So those would be like the first 3-4 hours of my day with, a break or two in the middle. I have a timer. I use the Pomodoro method a lot. It's really helpful, right? Especially if a project feels overwhelming, you set it for 25 minutes, give yourself a 5-minute break or 50 minutes. And then at about 12:45, so then I start doing more of like administrative communication stuff. So I'll start emailing, responding to emails in my inbox, updating, sending emails to my project manager, to my virtual assistant. So technical things to keep the business going. I'll respond to new project inquiries. Like I spend about a half hour a day on that alone. And I might be doing other business development stuff like writing LinkedIn posts, writing articles, preparing for podcasts, coming up with interesting business collaborations, developing new products that I can sell. So only about 3 to 4 hours of my day is actually writing copy. If you're running a business, then you shouldn't be spending more than 40% of your time on actual client deliverables because you need the rest of the time for administrative stuff and sales and keeping your pipeline full. So that's like, let's say from 12:30 to 2:30, I'm doing more of that lighter stuff, not so heavy because my brain is sharpest in the morning. So I like to get the deep work done first. And then at about 3 o'clock, the kids start coming home, 3:30. So that's the end of my morning. And then I work again in the evening, and that's when I do all my meetings. So like I said, my clients are in the States. So my meetings might consist of a discovery session with a new client where we review the responses to a questionnaire that I send them. I send them like a 5-page questionnaire with a lot of questions about their brand. They filled it out. And then we have a 1-hour meeting where we go through the responses and discuss it and have it back and forth. It might be a meeting with a prospect who's considering working with me. It might be a meeting with my project manager or a copywriter who's doing a subcontracting work for me. So a lot of meetings. And so I also do like one-off consultations as like one of my packages. So you can book me by the hour. So that would also take place in the evening from about 8 to 10:30. Hopefully not later, but sometimes later.
Let's be realistic here. Okay, I was already sold by that breakfast, but the rest of your day sounds like
I give myself a nice lunch too. Like I'm very once I'm eating, I'm very focused on enjoying my food and having it with quiet and a good book or a good read.
I love it. Okay, I'm taking tips. So that sounds like you have like a very balanced schedule and super organized. And I love that it also shows that it's not really just about writing, it's also about running a business. So if someone wants to go into this as a business owner, notice that, like you said, 40%, which is such a great clear delineation, which takes us into the next question, I guess. The next 2 questions are sort of, well, how do you feel like this compared to working for someone else affects your family life? For the better or for worse. And then I guess also like, how long are you working on each project? So just share some more of that if you would like.
Sure. So the disadvantages of working for yourself and working from home are that you never really leave work, right? So your brain is always buzzing with new ideas. You're thinking things over, and it's your business. It's your baby. It's your passion. So it's not like you close the door and you have that very distinct separation between work and life. So that's the challenge with running your own business, especially if it's from your own home. So creating boundaries is pretty important for that. The pluses of running your own business are that you are your own boss, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's funny because even when I was writing for magazines, right? So I was a freelancer. I wasn't an employee for the magazines, but you were still answering up to an editor, and there was like someone on top of you, and with, you know, very specific expectations and deadlines. And when you are running your own business, you set your own deadlines, you create your own policies, you create your own processes that work for you. And there's something so liberating and exciting about that. The other thing that's super exciting about running your own business is that the possibilities are really limitless. There's so much you can do, so many products you can create, so many ways you can expand your business, partnerships. It's like there's just there's so many options. It's a lot, there's a lot more room for growth than in, you know, when you're working as an employee. That said, a lot of people prefer working at an agency or in a position at a company because you have steady income, where you don't have to spend time on all the administrative stuff. You don't have to spend time marketing yourself. So if you're the kind of person who really hates the thought of meeting with new clients and having sales calls and putting yourself out there and putting up a website and marketing yourself, then you may be better off considering an employee type position.
Right. But you said that first part about being your own boss, the way like I feel about being my own boss, like there's just nothing like it. It's so good.
Yeah, like I don't work on Fridays, for example. And I tell that to my clients when they sign with me, and that's just my prerogative. It's my business, and this is the way I do things.
Right. Like I remember back in December when we had you speak at the BAM event, it was like, sure, isn't that great? You just don't have to ask anybody. Yeah, sure, I can come into New York for a week. No problem. I'm the boss. Okay. So that's not saying that that's for everyone, but for the people who have that niggling feeling, go for it. It's really great working for yourself.
I'll add to that I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. You know, some people come from a background where there's like a real entrepreneurial spirit, and their father owns a business and their brothers are all in business. And that was not the case for me at all. So I had a lot of ingrained beliefs that like, no, in our family, we don't run our own businesses. We work for other people. And so that's why it was so surprising and almost shocking to me when I tried it out, and I enjoyed it so much. So I would challenge you listening to this interview to, if you're not sure, give it a chance, because you may actually find that not only are you good at it, but you really enjoy it.
And I love that experiment that you mentioned that you did, that you said, okay, I'm going to give it a year. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to be irresponsible. I'm becoming an entrepreneur. I'm never going to work for anyone again, like so many people do. It's you can try it out as a 1-year experiment, which is a great amount of time to see if you'll be successful or not.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that I was able to make that kind of experiment, because not everyone is in a position to do that, right? So I'm not the only breadwinner in my family. So it wasn't like my family was relying on my income to pay the electric bill. So I was able to kind of play around like that. And the other thing that I kind of knew in my situation, there's a huge demand for a speech therapist where I live. So I kind of knew that if at the end of the year it didn't work out, I would probably have my exact job back. And if not the exact job, I would probably be able to get another job easily. So I did have that security. I want to acknowledge that not everyone has that, and it can feel like more of a risk. So that can be a hard decision to make.
Right. That's a great safety net to have. Okay. So another great question that I love getting was, what drives you to do your work? And I guess it's sort of combined with like, what are you passionate about, and how do you feel like you always get new ideas to do the kind of creative work that you do?
I think what drives me is I really love helping people meet their goals, whether it's a business goal, or if I'm working for a nonprofit, reaching a fundraising goal. I love being part of the effort to use writing to persuade, convince, inspire action. It's extremely gratifying to be able to take a strength that you have and use it to create measurable results. So I think that's like the number one driver for me.
So beautiful. I love it. I love that people can say that. That's the goal for everybody. Okay, so I see that we're almost up to questions. So if you would like to, please tell us about the course so people know when and how, because I know that it doesn't open often. It's like once a year, and I know they have to get on a waiting list. So tell us when we could get in and how to get in.
Sure. So the course is opening this Tuesday night, May 12th. I'm going to be running a live webinar about the 4 pillars you need to build a lucrative copywriting business. And at the end of the webinar, registration will open and the sales page will go live. So you'll be able to see all the course details and the different tracks and the final pricing. The course is a 4-month intensive course, but there is a track that's just for the second half of the course, which is just for business management, business fundamentals. So it's for all freelancers. So while the course itself is geared to copywriters, it's divided into 2 segments. The first half is copy skills. So practical copy fundamentals, how to write copy, different types of copy, marketing basics that you have to know as a copywriter. And the second half of the course is open to all freelancers. It teaches you business processes, what your process should look like from start to finish, from the time a client says, "Hi, can you design an ad for me?" until you actually get paid. And what that should look like and how to protect yourself to make sure that you don't end up with nightmare clients, that you always get paid, and that you don't have this feast and famine of 1 month having 10 clients and 1 month having no clients. So that's like the business side of the things, and that's track 2 of the course. If you sign up at my website, at the course website, copytribe.co, I'll put it in the chat to everyone right now. This is the URL to go to, copytribe.co. You sign up for my list there, you'll get notified about when the webinar is, and you'll also get notified about when course registration opens. So that's the course in a nutshell.
Perfect. Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I got locked out for a minute there. Okay, so let's go to the questions. Do you see them, or should I read them to you? I think I see the first one is about SEO.
So I think we're seeing different questions, which is really strange. Like my first question is from a Faggy. Hi, Faggy. So how about you start with your questions, and then we'll get to mine.
Okay, let's see. Let's see what we have. Okay, so I see that about writing degrees. Okay, that was just a comment. So is SEO a necessary skill to learn as a copywriter?
Yes, you have to know SEO fundamentals, and we cover that in the course. In fact, this coming cohort, I have a special bonus masterclass from an expert SEO person who's going to be teaching all the SEO fundamentals you need to know as a copywriter.
Cool. Okay, and if anyone doesn't know, SEO is search engine optimization, correct?
Yes. So that means like how to make sure that your page is ranking high in Google for the relevant searches. So a copywriter has to know how to integrate the right keywords so that the page will rank organically for the right things.
Perfect. Okay, so another question we may have covered, just let me know if there's anything that you want to add. What are tips to overcome the challenge of not being hired because of lack of experience? But then how do you go about getting that experience if no one will hire you? So we sort of answered that already, did we?
I think so.
Okay. Is it worth taking the course without a BA?
If you're a strong writer and a hard worker, and you are actually going to execute on what you learned and do all the assignments, then absolutely. There are quite a few students in my course who do not have a BA and who are doing really well.
Cool. Okay, as your career coach, I would add that you should do both. You could first take the course and then get your BA, or either one. But probably you want to have that BA based on what you said earlier. Okay, now someone's asking if the earnings, like 50 an hour, is American, or is that the norm in America? I'm sorry, in Israel and Europe.
I'm talking about U.S. clients. Israel, so it's funny. People talk about what's the going rate in Israel? And my response to that is, you decide what you want to charge and what you could charge based on your value. And we live in a global world today where you can work with anyone across the world. So why would you limit yourself to the people who are only willing to pay 50 shekel an hour if you can get clients who are willing to pay a lot more? So I don't really see that it should make a huge difference whether you live in England or Antwerp or Israel, there are clients out there who are willing to pay the rates that I indicated. So go ahead and find them, seek them out. And, you know, and the lower paying clients can find cheaper copywriters. I was just talking about to one of my students who lives in London, actually, and she told me that she used to work mostly for London-based clients, and they were paying much less. And now, after she took my course, and part of our courses we talk about LinkedIn and how to succeed on LinkedIn, she has grown a huge following on LinkedIn. And she, like 90% of her clients are now from the States, so she's making a lot more. So that's just one example of someone who's in Europe and is able to get those clients through good marketing.
Right. Yeah. So where you live like really makes no difference. I mean, I would say the same for me. I'm Zooming with people anyways who live in my neighborhood and people who live across the globe. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And I would also add that with Israel, just as a side point, so people have the sense that like Israeli clients will pay very little. And in some sectors, they do expect to pay very little. But like, let's say you're a copywriter and you're writing for clients who are based in Tel Aviv. You're talking about huge companies, like companies with decent marketing budgets. I have a student who lives also in Ramat Beit Shemesh, a few blocks away from me. She specializes in copy and content for cybersecurity firms. And I think all her clients are based in Tel Aviv, and she does really nicely each month. So there's a wide range even within Israel.
Right. Well, I guess things like that Israel's like a world leader in makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. So 2 questions about the course here. If I take a course by a copywriter like Michal, is that enough credibility for a freelance copywriter without a VA? And then someone else asked, is it worth taking the course if I've already taken a copywriting course?
Okay, so the first question is, in terms of, is it enough for you to get started as a freelance copywriter and have the copy and business skills you need to get started? Absolutely, it is enough. And you still have to do the hard work, and you're still gonna have to market yourself afterwards and go ahead and seek out those clients, but you absolutely will have the skills and the know-how and the confidence to do so, even without a VA. In terms of if you already took a copy course, that really depends on you. Are you getting the clients you want? Do you feel confident in your deliverables? Do you feel confident in the value you're bringing to the projects? If your business is running well and you feel confident, then great. No need to invest in additional courses. But if you feel like you want to grow your business, or if you feel like you're not really sure that the copywriting is super effective or based on solid strategy and principles, then yeah, invest in a course, invest in yourself. I was talking about it with a student of mine, and she said she was having trouble when she was initially thinking about taking my course a year ago. She's like, it's a big investment. Like, do I really want to do this? And then someone told her, listen, if you were opening up a retail store, you would have to invest in the actual physical space. You'd have to buy shelves. You'd have to buy stock. You'd have to invest in your business. So I think if you can view this as an investment in yourself, as in your business, that you will recoup rather quickly with hard work, then that's the best way to look at it.
Right. Okay. So then another question was, what else? I think we covered this. What else does a copywriter do besides for writing? So I'll go on to the next one. Success is measured by 2 things, like writing good copy and the ability to get your business up and running. So I guess, could you discuss that a little bit more about how much in your course you cover about how to get the business up and running, I think is the question.
Yeah. So let me just go back to that other question of what else does a copywriter need besides writing. One thing I didn't mention is they need to have a basic understanding of design and user experience, because they'll be working closely with designers to make sure that the end product is really fabulous. So that's something we do cover in the course, and that's something that copywriters also develop with experience, but they do have to have some level of background in design. So they don't have to be able to actually design. They don't need the technical skills of design, but they have to have an understanding of design and what good design looks like and what bad design looks like. As far as success measured by 2 things, good copywriting and the ability to get your business up and running. So again, if you're looking to work as a copywriter for an agency, so you may not need those business fundamentals because you need really good copy skills. You're not running your own business. If you'd like to work as a freelancer and eventually run your own proper business, then absolutely you need both the copy skills and the business fundamentals. And I hear this again and again from people who took really good copy courses. They took very comprehensive copy courses that give you tons of material about how to write copy. But when they finished the course, they still were not able to launch their businesses or get more clients because they didn't have the methods and the know-how of actually finding good clients, managing them well, and getting to the finish line in a way that makes everyone happy.
Right. Okay. I have two more questions here. Do we have time? Do you want to go over to your other questions?
Yeah, we can stay on for a couple more questions.
Okay. So someone asked if you're starting off and you want to make that portfolio that we discussed earlier. So what would you say are the most important kinds of pieces to have to impress future clients?
It really depends on the kind of clients you're looking for. So for example, if you're looking to specialize in a certain niche, if you're looking to work exclusively for nonprofits, if you're looking to do specifically websites or landing pages or emails, so you want to have samples in those areas specifically. If you're working for those cybersecurity firms, right, you want to have samples in that area. If you're not sure what your niche is yet and you're still at the experimenting stage and working with a variety of clients, then I think like you would want to cover the basics. So like having one sample of ad copy, one sample of website copy, and maybe an email sequence would be a really good place to start.
I love that. Okay, that's good to put that together. Okay, and if you don't know what any of those things are, Google it. You'll find it in the Googles. Okay, so how does the course work? How much does it cost? I think that that's information that they can find on the website, right?
Yeah, and the pricing is not 100% finalized, so I'm not going to name pricing right now. It's likely going to be around $2,000 for the course, but like I said, it's not finalized, so wait to see the details on the sales page.
Perfect. Okay. And then just to clarify, the Copy Drive course is for people who are total beginners in copywriting is the question?
Okay, great question. So we usually have like about 50-50. We have about 50% of the students have some background in writing. A lot of them are magazine writers or book writers or authors who kind of like dabbled in copy and did random copy jobs over the years, but never really learned copy in a systematic, structured way. And then we have 50% who are total beginners, seminary graduates and people like that. And we actually have a separate channel for the complete beginners and for the ones who have a little bit more experience. That said, I open the course to both types because surprisingly, they really need to learn the same things. Like for the people who already dabbled in copy, so some of the stuff they kind of know or they learned with experience, but what they tell me is that they needed to learn it in a clear, systematic way. Like they needed to have it clear in their head, which they didn't. Everything was just a jumble and every project was like Googling 17 blog posts to figure out what to do now. They didn't have a system. Right? And the people who are learning it from scratch, they're just learning the system from scratch. So they don't have like confusing messages in their head. They're just learning it in a very methodical way. The one thing you do need to have, even if you're a total beginner, is that you have to have strong writing skills. So if you're not sure, like if you didn't get feedback in high school or in college that your essays were great, then you may want to work on your writing skills before considering a career in copywriting.
Right. Great point. Okay. They want to know, is it live or can it be accessed anytime? Are you actually there giving the course or it's recorded?
So the classes are all recorded. Some of the classes will be live, probably most of them. Some of the classes will be recorded, but either way, they'll be available in the course portal for all members. So it doesn't matter if you're available to come to the live class, you'll be able to watch the recording within 24 hours of when the class was given.
Okay, and one last one, and then after this, any more, I guess you'll just follow up with Michal. Do you have to have a niche as a copywriter, or can you be successful being more general?
Great question. In my personal experience, I have found that the copywriters who are really successful financially have a pretty defined niche. That said, it often takes time to figure out how you want to position yourself and what niche you want to specialize in. So for the first few months or maybe even year or two of your copywriting career, you may have to be more of a generalist and see how things go. And what a lot of my students do is they'll try out a niche for 3 to 6 months. see how it goes, and then pivot if it's not working. And I always tell this to my students, you're not married to your niche. And no one is going to remember that 6 months ago on your LinkedIn profile, you wrote that you're doing websites and now you changed it to emails or landing pages, right? Like no one is keeping such careful track of your career development. So just try to get a feel for different kinds of projects and then experiment with a niche, see how it goes. And with experience and time, you'll get more clarity on what you want to specialize in. But in general, in all careers, not just copywriting, specializing is usually the way to go if you really want to become a master in something and you really want to be able to command very high rates.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I love that. That's such a like real fear that people have. Like, what if I tell people like nobody's watching you, nobody cares?
Yeah,
that's such a good point. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I found that myself also. Meaning with who I coach and what kind of coaching I do, it's by trial and error. After I did, something that I wouldn't even thought of doing, I'm like, wow, that was the best session I ever had. I love it. I'm going to do more of that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take your questions now. What do you have?
Okay. So I think in the end, we mostly aligned. There's one question here, is there going to be a course at the beginning of next year? I don't know. I don't make plans. Thank God I have a young family. So far, I have given the course like with an interval of a full year in between. So I don't have plans to give the course in another 6 months. I probably will wait a full year if I give the course again. So the answer to that is I don't know, but probably not in the near future. After this course launch. Just seeing if there's any other questions that I got personally. Someone asked about books that I recommend. You can email my assistant here. I'll put the email in the chat at hello@copytribe.co, and I will send you. Oh, that went to 1 second. I'll type it again. I'll send you my best recommendations for copywriting books. So email.
Oh, I want that list.
What you want that list?
I want that list.
So actually the copywriter, I usually just direct people to the Copywriter Club has a book list on their website, fabulous book list. So that's usually where I send people, plus a few books on my own. Someone asked, what do you recommend to someone who is more timid when starting something new, especially a new career? Anytime you start something new, it's scary, right? It's a new journey. It can feel overwhelming. Just say you have to give it your best shot and see where it goes. So I think it's very natural to feel a little nervous and anxious, but that would apply to anything in life. And I think you have to just decide if you're willing to go all in and give it your best shot.
Right. Yeah. If you want to if you want to start, meaning if you want your life to look like yesterday, then keep doing what you were doing yesterday. But otherwise, be comfortable being uncomfortable.
And any successful entrepreneur will say that they took a risk at some point, right? Usually success comes with a significant risk.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. I think we covered all the questions. You can feel free to reach out to that email address that I put in the chat if you have additional questions. And I hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Michal. I love this. I learned so much. And I'm so excited that so many people got to hear the answers to this question. So to all these questions, I mean, good seeing you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for coming, everyone. And hope you enjoy the rest of your week and have a good Shabbos.